What's up? This your man Umar Lee. We're joining you here today with the St. Louis Speaks podcast here in the Grove at Rise Coffee. I can never remember the name of this place, man. I kept on telling people the coffee shop in the Grove. So I hope there's only one coffee shop in the Grove. Anyone knows that accurate or inaccurate? Is there more than one coffee shop in the Grove?
I know.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, I think you're accurate.
For the ownership of Rise, yes, there's only one coffee.
Right. Yeah. For the sake of them letting us be in here today, this is the only coffee shop.
Absolutely.
I know they roast coffee or have like some kind of coffee factory like in the neighborhood.
Yes.
There's a local Quick Trip too. They sell.
Oh
they sell
yeah.
some coffee.
Well, I stopped a Quick Trip on the way here, but I will buy something before I leave. And of course, Rise Coffee has the best coffee in the Grove. Even though I've never drank a cup of coffee in my life, so I don't know if my advice is all that good. And I just want to say we're talking about development, and we got some developers here, we got some political people here. And driving up here, looking for a place to park, I thought about development and sometimes unintended consequences of development. So my place is in North St. Louis, and I dropped my daughter off in the North Hampton neighborhood with my aunt. They're out Lone Elk Park right now looking at elk and animals and stuff like that. And so I'm driving through Tower Grove Park. I see the city Republican, I don't know, it's a barbecue, some kind of festival they're having. Looked like there was about 5-6 people there or something. Not too many Republicans in the city of St. Louis. So I pull into I pull in here and there's really nowhere to park. And so people are just kind of driving around looking for parking spaces. And that's kind of been the development and the design of the Grove, is to limit parking, to, I guess, encourage walkability or encourage transit or whatever, which is a good thing, obviously, for many different reasons. So people get more exercise, better for the environment, and encourages neighborhood development. Flip side of the coin is, I remember when I drove a cab and I would drive through all these side streets of the Grove, and they'd just be littered with broken glass all up and down the street, because the further people park away, the more prone they are to get their windows broken and their stuff stolen. So that was a development thought that I had in my mind as I came up. I'm not a developer. I've never attended a development meeting. I attended 2 neighborhood association meetings in my life, and I felt like I wanted to shoot myself within 5 minutes of both meetings. But it's a special person that can attend these meetings, which are really boring, and attended by like usually a clique. The special person that can do this on a regular basis and get into it, because those are the people that are saying that we need a chamber pot here, or we need a ball in the street here, or we need this done, or we need this street narrowed, or whatever. Those are the people that are going to have the influence with the city or whatever process goes on. So it's not a good thing that I want to shoot myself through 5 minutes of the meeting, but it's a reality, and you see the attendance is very small, because not many people can get that interested like the people here. So the first person I want to introduce himself is Chris Kramer.
That's correct, Chris Kramer.
Now, Chris, are you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What organization are you working for, and how long have you been in St. Louis and been involved in development?
I work at Beyond Housing, and I've been there 25 years now. Not a lifelong St. Louisan, but I can answer the high school question. So
where'd you go to high school at?
U City.
U City High School. All right, man. U City.
Class of 1980.
I tell you what, we had a dreamer, even though she doesn't like to be called a dreamer, DACA recipient, who said my parents are the real dreamers, is what she said, which I thought was a powerful line. And she graduated from U City, and she said she started activism senior year in high school, University City High School. So she was very good representative of your high school. And Beyond Housing is in Pagedale, North St. Louis County area.
We do a majority of our work now, but a majority work in a place called, we call 24-1, which is the boundaries of the Northeast Schools Collaborative. It used to be 24 small municipalities in the boundaries of that school district. Now there are 23, another merger is underway, so it's soon to be 22, but we're not changing the brand, it's still 24-1.
And the new mayor of Bell Ridge finally got the keys to the office by court order a couple days ago.
I believe now he can actually get in and use his office appropriately.
Well, we spent I don't know how many hundreds of billions to quote unquote spread democracy to Iraq. I don't know how much it would take to spread democracy to Bell Ridge. So we'll see.
I'm Lucas Delort. I am Community Development Manager at Lutheran Development Group. We're a community development organization that's primarily focusing on Gravely Park, Dutchtown, and Benton Park West. We do some development, some affordable housing development, some other development, and we do neighborhood initiatives. That's a segment that's growing in our organization. We have a small summer youth jobs program that's going on now. And we were also the primary funder of the Gravely Jefferson Historic Neighborhoods Plan, which was just adopted by the city of St. Louis. I can keep it there for now. What else should I say?
I just have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is there an association between the actual Lutheran Church and this? Are they one of the funders? Did they seed this? Did they?
Yeah, we're a registered service organization of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and our primary funding, other than development fees, is from Lutheran Foundation. They help get our organization going, and it's a strong funder. I personally am not at all Lutheran, so I can't answer much.
I can't debate the Reformation with you.
Oh no. I have zero Lutheran ties. But that makes me the anomaly in our organization, so I can direct those questions
I was
elsewhere.
going to impress Lucas with my memory of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, and Wisconsin Synod. But now, since you're not a Lutheran, you probably don't give a shit.
I know those all exist. That's the extent of it.
Yeah. Mr. Glenn Burley.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Where'd you go to high school at?
Not in St. Louis. Illinois Math and Science Academy.
Where's that at?
In Aurora, Illinois, outside Chicago.
That's where they had Wayne's World, right?
In Aurora, yep. Yep. And fun fact, the
Lutheran Reformation on Wayne's World.
founder of YouTube and a couple other people came from my high school. So, so.
That's a good one, man.
What?
Hey, man. I mean, you should hit them up for some Lutheran development money. All right, Glenn Burley.
Yeah. So my name's Glenn Burley. My day job, I work for the Equal Housing Opportunity Council. We're the Metropolitan Area's fair housing enforcement nonprofit. As part of my job, I also provide staff support for St. Louis Equal Housing and Community Reinvestment Alliance, which is the anti-redlining coalition. We work on ensuring credit access in areas that have been traditionally denied mainstream banking. And in my free time, I volunteer with Team TIF. We work on a lot of issues around development incentives and how those impact the city's budget picture overall, and also how that there are winners and losers in how we use these things. Most specifically, the children of St. Louis public school system. So that's my story.
Oh, you didn't finish it. Where'd you go to
High school, I went to Subiaco Academy for Boys.
Where is that at?
It is in Subiaco.
Where the hell is Subiaco? What the hell is Subiaco?
It is a monastery in northwestern Arkansas.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That sounds like some stuff from Mordor.
It's weird. You're driving through nowhere, and it's like cows and some fields, and then there's this like large foothill with what appears to be a castle on top of it at the bottom of the Ouachita Mountains. And that was where I went to high school.
That's like some Stephen King novel.
Yeah.
You mentioned something real quick before we pass to Megan about the organizations, Equal Housing, CREA, Team TIF, all that stuff. One of my early legal jobs was a community organizer for Acorn. This is a long time ago. 4304 Manchester and Tower Grove. Which was, you mentioned redlining. We worked on redlining. I didn't know what redlining was before I got hired. We worked on a lot of issues, and I really think that Acorn, if you go back in history, really contributed a lot to a lot of issues locally in communities. I actually went to New York and worked with them in Patterson, New Jersey, a little bit in Dallas, Texas as well. And right when they folded, they were they said, man, we'd like to get you to run an office out in Ohio. And then Glenn Beck came with the expose, and then the whole thing goes. But I always think it's kind of poetic when I drive by 4304 Manchester. And now it's called like
Grove Properties.
Grove Properties, which we were dedicated to getting housing for the working poor, right? And we were focused on pocketbook issues. And this was a time in the local Democratic Party and nationally when those issues, talking about the 1990s, were really being kicked, with welfare reform and other things. They were really being put on the back burner. And when I see that Grove Properties, man, I'm sure some people have some very nice apartments and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. It just really kind of makes me feel some kind of way when I see they went from Acorn to Grove Properties.
I was the last head organizer for Acorn in St. Louis, so I was the last executive director essentially for Eastern Missouri. So I was there when everything went down with Fox News. We got lots of death threats. People would call and tell us they were going to blow up our office or tell me that they would be waiting for me when I'd be off work after I did some interview on TV. It really was, it was just mob violence essentially, orchestrated by the right wing. But yeah, it is definitely interesting because, Grove Properties, they do high-end homes that get these abatements, right? So, the group that is actually in the building that used to be Acorn, and I remember when the city, about a year before we folded, the city tried to condemn our building and get us out of the area. They had these inspectors. Now, normally there's inspectors that are essentially assigned to your ward. There are also some like mobile ones, and there's one that's assigned to WashU Medical Redevelopment Corporation. These are the folks that would go out and cite people's houses on blocks they were trying to flip. And eventually we got on their radar and had to spend a lot of money putting in a new stairway in the back and stuff to stop them getting.
See, I remember walking with Acorn door to door in this neighborhood where these houses have been torn down to build these big, expensive apartment complexes. I remember knocking on people's doors. I remember the conversations I had with the residents, and they would tell me then, they say, we're all getting ready to go.
You got to remember, on that side, on the southern side of Manchester, WashU owned and held properties for decades that they just let rot.
And then this one last thing, we got to get to Megan. My last Acorn experience, I'm in the suburbs of Dallas in Irving, Texas. I'm standing across a freeway from what you see is a complete 100% replica of the White House, which the Trinity Broadcasting Network, which is a TV preacher outfit, Benny Hinn and whole nine yards, they've constructed this. And so I'm walking across the freeway, going door to door. I can't even remember what the campaign was. And a guy just speeds up to me. And he's holding this Acorn flyer in his hand. He said, have you ever read Saul Alinsky's book? And he just goes on this tirade. And you're in Texas. And so, in St. Louis, I always tell people fireworks and gunshots, assume gunshots, because you can't go wrong with safety, right? In Texas, I assumed everybody is an armed lunatic getting ready to shoot me. So that was my last experience. Pass it on to Megan Aaliyah Green.
Do this without tripping the
Thank you. You got my middle name correct.
Well, we did a YouTube video, which people are afraid to watch.
That is true. So I'm Megan Aaliyah Green. I'm the Alderwoman for the 15th Ward. Have been in office just about 4 years now. It's been a fast 4 years. During that time have, I think, been the person who has called the question on a lot of development that we've seen at City Hall. And I'll be honest, the first time I voted no on a project, I didn't really realize the implications of voting no on that project. I just thought, well, this doesn't make financial sense, so why would I just rubber stamp this? And it caused a bit of upset, I guess, at this the status quo. And I've continued to take a lot of those votes because I think we have to get past this thing of aldermanic courtesy and just letting everything go through because an alderman in a particular ward wants it. And need to be looking at the city as a whole and the implications of a lot of the development that's happening in the city on our tax base and on the public schools, and ensuring that development matches the needs of people that are in the communities that it's going into. And that's something I've tried to do in Tower Grove South. Been a big proponent of community benefit agreements and also participatory budgeting to be able to give residents much more say in how we use our ward tax dollars and what our priorities should be as a community. And that's something that I would like to see us do all across the city and not just in the 15th ward. But to answer your high school question, I also did not go to high school in St.
New York.
Louis. Oneonta, yes, City of the Hills, City of the Hills. Enclave in the middle of the Catskill Mountains. So not a lot of people know where that is.
And you went to Penn State.
I did go to Penn State.
The defending NCAA wrestling champions. And probably going to win again. But really building a dynasty there. But you were an athlete too, right?
I was a tap dancer in college.
Okay.
If you want to, some people dispute whether that is considered an athlete or not. But it takes a lot of athleticism to be able to.
Well, that's what because we had an argument and discussion. I was sitting around with a friend of mine, and we were matching like St. Louis political fights, who would win in fist fights between different politicians. And my friend said, Megan can't fight. No, Megan's this nerdy, she's wearing glasses. I said, no. I said, Megan was a college athlete. I said, you were a college volleyball player. So
No.
so,
I mean, maybe in another life.
So, I remember something, but...
I'm a very avid runner.
I saw you play softball.
Yeah, so I ran and I did kickball here. I do my annual kickball tournament. I love running. I was running marathons up until I fractured my knee and kind of never quite recovered from that.
Right.
Your body does different things once you hit 30, I've learned. But
Well, wait till you hit 40.
I know. I cannot imagine, when I see 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds still running marathons, and I'm just like, man, you are lucky. I don't know how your body has kept this together for this long.
In development and physical fitness are tied because I have a friend of mine, Dr. Eric Parimba, brother of Ben Parimba, Ole Onalia, and all those restaurants, Benevolent King, the new one, who's talked a lot about this architecture and physical health. There's certain things you can do with architecture to increase physical health. Now, we're in St. Louis, which is a largely we're an overweight city. We're out of shape city, and there are things you can do in architecture to actually increase that. I'm trying to say, and I think it's very important. I just want to get to the alderman point real quick. A friend of mine, I won't mention his name because he doesn't want this to be public, but we're just talking about alder people. Is it alder people?
It should be.
It should be alder people.
It's not yet.
Someday. All the people in development. This was an alder man, but he wanted to build a building in his ward, and a small building, a small project, and that aldermanic privilege comes up, and the guy says, "Yeah, we can make that happen." He said, "But my birthday's coming up." And he said, "You got to throw me a birthday party with an open bar." And my friend thought about it, and he said, "This project's not even that important to me to be throwing this guy a birthday party with an open bar." So we know that in St. Louis, the alder can be a friend of. It can be really three things: a friend of development, a foe to development because they got to see what's in it for them, or number three, they can be a friend of sustainable development for everybody. And I think number three is obviously where we all want to get to in the city of St. Louis. And if you mind passing. Now, some people pronounce it, like my ex-wife, pronounce the name Fatima, and some people say Fatima. So how do you pronounce your name?
I'm Fatima.
Fatima.
Yes.
Okay, just like my ex-wife. who I always say, no one may love me, but they depend on my child support checks.
Well, I can't disagree with that.
Right.
And I just want to ask everybody, if you have a weapon, please put it away, because I don't want you to shoot yourself in the foot, because I'm the founder and vice chair of the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association.
I read it.
But I promise you, our meetings are of more in depth and have more meat and substance. I am also a pre-city employee. I worked in contract compliance with minority and women-owned business certification and monitoring federal and state funded projects. I'm also a construction project manager and site developer. So my inspiration for finding and founding the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association, also known as HPNA, was to redevelop, revitalize not just Hyde Park, 3rd Ward, but to bridge those gaps between other neighborhoods. Because I am so tired of the stigma, oh, it's because this one's on the south side that this one has more money. Yes, there are some great racial divides, but there are also some divides that each of us have set up for ourselves. And so sharing information, bridging gaps, coming to events like this, talking and being mentored by people like this is one of the steps that our association is looking to do to bring us all forward, and development is key in our area. And I went to Normandy High School.
You know, I'll get right there. Now, I would ask you what class, but
72. No
72.
shame in my game.
Because I got a lot of friends. I got a lot of friends with the Normandy, so that was
all right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Class of 72.
Yes.
I actually, to answer the high school question for everybody, I went to McClure North of the first Florida school district. I got kicked out with a physical altercation with a principal. You know, I thought he was, he should be trying to tell me what to do with it, And so I actually finished up at Job Corps.
Wow.
And I think Job Corps is an example. I've been on the other end of a lot of this social work and development. I remember getting out of prison in New York City, and they had these programs to help people. And the programs, you had to have so much paperwork in order to get in the door to get help. It was going to take me months to get the paperwork. And what was I going to do in the course of these months? How was I going to feed myself? So I learned a lot of them was about the paperwork. It was about the these little regulations and whatnot. You had to have an address. Well, you ain't got no address. This or that. A lot of people don't have no telephones. So Job Corps is a similar thing. I wouldn't recommend Job Corps to anything, to anyone, unless they've changed dramatically. Because what was going on in Job Corps when I was there was a lot of fighting. If you want to learn how to fight good, go to Job Corps, because you're going to do a lot of fighting. And a lot of romantic relations, including between staff and faculty. So Job Corps is not my recommendation. Now Mark, the producer extraordinaire and researcher, historian, archivist, and now a St. Louis tour guide, just gave his first tour of St. Louis. He has a list of questions, but I'm going to start with another question. I will get to your questions, Mark. But, I want to start with another question. I go wherever the spirit leads me, and right now it's World Cup soccer, and I gotta admit I don't really watch soccer, but every 4 years I get really captivated by the World Cup, and I always say I'm gonna start watching more soccer. I always say that because I watch it, I enjoy the games, it's a good sport. I didn't like soccer growing up in St. Louis because I viewed it as kind of a middle class or wealthy sport where kids that were kind of wimpy played, or kids whose parents didn't want them to play against black kids because you'd be playing against Matthews Dickey and Royal Knights and Herbert Hoover and NYA and Normandy. So a lot of white mothers would say quite explicitly when I was growing up in the 80s, we ain't taking you to Matthews Dickey to play no game. You're going to play soccer. So I had that kind of that attitude. In the Muslim community, I became very good friends with some brothers from Malaysia and Saudi Arabia and really all over the world, but particularly those during the '94 World Cup who were avid soccer fans. And I learned to really enjoy soccer from them. So I'm not an enemy of soccer by any stretch of the imagination. I like it. I don't hang out to Amsterdam, and I don't pronounce soccer with a European accent or nothing like that. But football. But the development issue was very big with regards to the soccer stadium. These big ticket items, we've seen the build it and they will come with the dome. And we were excited. And now we got a dome, we don't have a team. People saying, what the hell are you going to do with the dome? Joyce Meyer, Guns N' Roses. Together. So we've seen plenty of big ticket items. As a kid, my grandmother took me to Union Station when they had the grand reopening. And my grandparents met at the old St. Louis Dairy, which was across the street from Union Station. He'd just come back from the Marine Corps in World War II, and they were both living in Old North St. Louis at the time. They got married, and so Union Station was very sentimental to them. So they took me to the grand reopening, and Mayor Shamer was there and was excited, and everybody was like, "Yeah, St. Louis," and then it, fizzled out. Nothing really happened. So we've seen these big developments. St. Louis Center. I remember when people were excited about St. Louis Center. Soccer stadium comes, and the vote comes, and all the big money is behind putting this money towards the MLS stadium. All this, the kind of, a lot of the smart people, quote unquote, were trolling me on social media because I was against MLS coming to St. Louis. I mean, I'm not against MLS. I'm against taxpayer funding. So that vote goes down, and their narrative is St. Louis keeps shooting itself in the foot. St. Louis can't win for losing. As is timely, the World Cup is now. How do you view that?
So I'm not a big fan of big giant projects that take a ton of public dollars. I'd rather us focus on neighborhoods, on our children, on our schools, and invest there. As you said, we have a lot of long histories and a lot of those troubling facts that says no sports teams ever return what everyone promises on the front side to any region. They're all a drain on public resources. So again, we're on our work. We don't even bother to think about anything like that. We got a lot of work to do to think about what the community has told us is important to them. Right? Fix the housing stock. Help us with making our schools better. Help us with economic development. Help us with job opportunities. Help us with access to health care. Help us with those kind of things. To me, as a region, done a terrible job at prioritizing what's important. And I think until we figure out public and private. From the philanthropic standpoint, we're gonna keep bouncing around like we do now and beating ourselves up about woe is us. We can't ever get anything right because I think we have our priorities wrong. Again, I don't know how much more neighborhood deterioration and problems, whether city or county, we have to go through. I don't know how many schools have to fail, how many more bad headlines, how many more bad data points do we need to say, hey, maybe we might want to do something a little differently as it relates to both prioritization and then allocation of resources, public and private.
I'm glad you mentioned the county. Well, the first thing when I heard 24-1 name, I thought of back in the day, kids would fight and beef over Bell Ridge versus Hillsdale, Pagedale versus Pine Lawn, which of course, like the borders on our southern border, are purely made up borders, right? But even in the case of that, it's even more ridiculous that you establish this identity of the community and then people begin fighting over these arbitrary boundaries, that some real estate developer probably, developed years ago. Prior to Ferguson, prior to Mike Brown being killed by Darren Wilson in Ferguson, I was talking to a lot of people about North County. I'd written about North County, and the week before, I was at the Royale Bar on South Kings Island. I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. A member of Lewis Reed's staff and myself got into a very heated discussion that almost ended in a physical. It was slightly physical because I had to push him a couple times, but not that I wanted to assault him. I just wanted him to respect my space. Because he said I was talking about North County too much. And I needed to focus on the city. The city is where the problem is. City. When I worked at Acorn, I was trying to get Craig Robbins, y'all know if you remember Craig, to focus on North County, Jennings, with Mayor Thorpe had this town 80% black, and you have Mayor Thorpe, white mayor with a complete white machine running the city. No one's paying attention. You couldn't get anybody to pay attention to stuff going on outside the city because it's all about the urban thing, right? Have you encountered any of that yourself? People say, well, Chris is doing good, but he's in North County, and who gives a shit about North County?
Look, I think we get a little bit of that, right, in terms of, where are the big problems, right? So, Mr. McKee, last I checked, got a fair amount of press, everything he did, right? So we're toiling away for 10 years, and we've actually done stuff, right? We've built grocery stores and movie theaters and housing and invested in schools and did a lot of stuff. And, we struggle to get, again, the kind of recognition. And for me, I don't care about recognition only if it leads to more resources to do more work, because we have a lot more work to be done. So, yeah. Look, I think, again, we're a big fan of this idea of and both. I think we're smart to say, hey, city and county, maybe there are problems that look alike, and we could think about how do we put together solutions that are replicatable, that can magically cross Skinker, Keeneland, Jennings Station Road, and they might actually work over that magical divide. Because
the families are crossing Skinker and Keeneland, Jennings Station Road, and they're moving in and out of the city and county their life and over generations.
All the time, all the time. Again, for a region, right? If we don't again get our act together and say what are our priorities, right? Whether it's the forsake of all report, whether it's the forward through for, doesn't matter, right? We can pick your report that you want to say, wow, there's some problems there, and there's some actually recommendations. Hey, why don't we think about trying some of those recommendations, because those are things we're not doing currently. And whatever we're doing now is not working, right? So let's have the courage to say, let's try something a little different. I know doing different in St. Louis is scary, right? God forbid we do anything that we haven't done in the past, right? But we're failing our neighborhoods, we're failing our children, and this region is going to continue this slow downward trend unless we, again, public and private sector, figure out where do we apply the resources, how do we, driven by the folks that live in community that know what the problems are and know what the solutions are.
So were you a big proponent of the MLS stadium?
No. No, I won't take up too much airspace with this, but I agree with everything that Chris said. That last thing we needed to focus on, and still the last thing we need to focus on. Focus on housing, quality housing. Where I live is the highest complaints on illegal dumping and some of the highest lead levels in youth. Gravois Park. I live at the Gravois Park. Yeah, so I don't care about it publicly. I
just saw an article from Kara Spencer. She shared that it's like the hottest real estate market in the Midwest or something like that.
Yeah, that's its own conversation. Yes, let's get global capital in our neighborhood and see what that does. I was not super happy that was being publicized in such a positive way, because I half block up from me, Garcia Properties bought a house out of foreclosure for $30,000, pushed someone out of it, and turned around and sold it for $180,000. And I don't think we need to spread around the Forbes articles that show what more money in our neighborhood could do in that sense. So I was a little frustrated.
My immediate reaction was, and this is not a diss on Kara because I do want her as a guest on the show, but I always look at things, development-wise, what's good for working people, what's good for poor people. Because people with money are going to be okay, no matter what the development plan is. If you look at me and say, well, we're in Forest Park Southeast, which they call the Grove now, and look at all the prosperity in the Grove now, right? I'm going to respond to you. The people that are prosperous in the Grove right now, that are living luxurious, were they not living luxurious 5 years ago? They were just living good somewhere else. Tell me the story of the people that were living on these blocks 5 or 10 years ago. More than likely, they're still going to be in the same economic situation. They're just out in North County, or they're deeper in South City. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's what is this investment going to benefit anyone besides people that have a lot of money and they can do good wherever they're at. Mr. Glenn Burley, Team TIFF, you know, it's like it's almost a registered gang in the city of St. Louis. You got the downtown Taliban and 4-4 Bud and Team TIFF, but you were really active on this soccer stadium deal,
Right.
and you got a lot of hate too. I don't think you get trolled as bad as I do, because you're more of you have more like a nerd aesthetic kind of a.
And I spend less time on Twitter. I think Twitter seems to be the platform for trolling.
Oh,
so.
Twitter is bad for civilization.
Yeah, so I think by avoiding Twitter, I avoid some of the trolling.
I deleted my Twitter, now I'm back on, but it's like eating. I eat good for 5 days and then that's it. But I really think it's bad for the culture. You know, I really do. But so you got trolled a little bit, but you were very active against the stadium.
Yeah, no, I went and spoke at ward meetings and neighborhood meetings across the city. So yeah, I mean, it was a terrible deal. I mean, one thing I think we should just be really. So one thing I think problems we have around conversations around development is that we're not having at all honest conversations around development. Even the conversation we're having right now is kind of, using coded language and stuff to tiptoe around things. And, look, the soccer stadium is like nothing else. It's just like everything else in our, governmental systems where you have billionaires pushing around elected officials and spending a lot of money to get even more money from the public. They spent $1.3 million because they thought they were going to get 60, right? So this is just an investment for them, and they know that the politicians are going to vote to recommend whatever they say. And so we should, when we're talking about these things like the soccer stadiums, we shouldn't be talking about these as some kind of just localized thing, because the leadership of that ownership group was one of Mitt Romney's golfing buddies from Bain Capital, right? They use local sort of front people for it, but I mean, these are people that, the amount of money that they were going to be getting from the city taxpayers is probably like their vacation budget for the year, right? Like, this is literally the ultra wealthy simply trying to push around people that are broke. I mean, our city is functionally bankrupt, and our city is functionally bankrupt largely because of bad deals like that, and the fact that we use development incentives as a way to get wealthier people to move in here and remove low-income black people from the city, right? We are spending our money. We are deeply in debt. Our bond rating is just above junk rate. Just above junk rate at this point. Our city's net position is like a quarter of what Kansas City has, and it's falling like a rock, So, I mean, one thing I think we need to do a better job of as a whole in these discussions is being honest and frank about what's happening and not simply saying that we're going to improve the neighborhoods. Because I can tell you exactly where the people from Forest Park Southeast live, because Park Central and WashU did a study. They said when we bulldozed McCreetown, where did those folks go? They went to Dutchtown and they went to Gravois Park. And now those people are being pushed out of Dutchtown to Gravois Park, right? Folks from Fox Park pushed out recently. A lot of them went to Bevo as Bosnian civilian. Now they're getting shoved out of Bevo, right? So, I mean, we should be clear that the city has an active policy of removing low-income black people from the city, and that it happens to be called tax abatement. Now, it's not to say that tax abatement always has to be bad, but the way we use it follows a specific development paradigm that has been replicated in numerous neighborhoods across the city, and is continuing to be replicated, and we sit around and we talk about it like we can't expect the same outcome. We know exactly what's going to happen.
So, Megan, one of the first issues that really got you, I guess, in the media was over the stadium issue. And that was what led up to the whole fiasco, and the radio was romantic and weird, etc. And you were very vocal in opposition to this deal. And because everybody has talked about the stadium already, let's just put it in context of the big ticket development. Now, I know you probably, I don't know if you like him or not, you know what I'm saying, because it's in St. Louis County. But Mark Montavani or Vanny, whatever, how you say his name, run against Steve Stinger out in St. Louis County for county executive race. And I thought he gave a very good interview with the Politically Speaking podcast, where he mentioned the big ticket development. That St. Louis has been so attached to the big ticket development and has continually failed St. Louis. And he mentioned that you had a time when the Cleves Landing was a place to be. And it was, you know, that was, you wanted to party, you go to the Landing. When I was a cab driver, you get people in their 40s, they wanted to go party, like, yeah, take me to the Landing. We get out to the Landing, and like, what happened? I said, well, Wash Ave. And I remember interviewing Larry Rice when they were first doing the whole Wash Ave development. Now you go to Wash Ave, it's dead. What happened? Ballpark Village. So it's just continued cannibalization. You're at the board of Alderman every day, or when it's in session, and you know people are politicking with you, and you're politicking with them. Is St. Louis still stuck on this big ticket development, or do you think there's a consensus that we're going to move behind it?
I think we're absolutely still stuck in that mindset, and I think St. Louis, I like to call it silver bullet project syndrome, and we're fixated with whatever bright, shiny object that we really, really want right now, and it doesn't matter how much it costs, it doesn't matter how much it takes away from our tax base, it doesn't matter if we get real financial analysts who are not, part of chambers of commerce to give us numbers and tell us how these deals actually impact the city. It doesn't matter how many facts or figures or any of that we bring forward to show that these projects are not good for the city. They are still our number one development strategy. We have this thought that if we build it, they will come. We are continuing to lose population as a city, and we think that the only way to get that is through these big ticket items. And I think that strategy is backwards. I think that we invest in neighborhood level development, we improve the quality of life for people who live here now, make sure they're getting good access to good housing, to good schools, to all the social services, support things that they need first. And then when people see that we provide a good level of service to people who live in this city, that we take care of people who live here, then we become this place that people want to move to. No football stadium, no soccer stadium, no ballpark village is going to change that. And we can't just rely on people coming down, 40 to go to a ball game and back to the county at the end of the day and think that that's somehow going to save us. It's not. Yet I think we're stuck in these old paradigms, and some of it I think is self-esteem. We have really poor self-esteem as a city, and the debate we will routinely hear at the board and from the folks who are championing economic development for our city is that St. Louis is such a horrible place that we have to do all these things. We have to give out all these incentives. We have to, chase all of these dreams, because if we don't, nobody else will love us. It's almost like this abusive relationship, and we just can't let go. And we can't underestimate. I think Glenn brought up a really good point. We cannot underestimate the role that the money and the financial backers have to influence these deals. A lot of times I think we talk about campaign finance and big money in politics and all of that stuff at a federal level and with the Greitens stuff even at a state level. But it's just as pervasive locally, and perhaps it's even worse because we have fewer people looking out for it, fewer checks and balances in place to shine the light on what's going on. And we actually have higher campaign finance limits and looser lobbying laws at the local level than we do at the state or federal level. And so I think all of this is compounding, and we have to recognize how interconnected it is, and that we have to chip away at the big money influence in this as much as we can if we're really going to get some of the changes and outcomes that we really need to have.
So Fatima, you're in Hyde Park,
Yes.
and that's a unique neighborhood. It's a unique neighborhood. You got Old North on one side, which to me, I'll be honest with you, I don't really even, I always Old North, Hyde Park, to me that's all the same thing. I don't use a lot. I got a theory, I want to eliminate 75% of neighborhood names in the city of St. Louis. You got some of these neighborhoods that people are born and raised in that neighborhood don't even know the name to, or they don't even use it. Now Hyde Park is a neighborhood people wouldn't use that name, but there are other neighborhoods that are just kind of like these, Kings Highway Hills, or people don't really use those names. So Hyde Park is in this situation. You got Old North on one side, which has the Old North Restoration Group, and you have this this kind of thing going on. I always put there's three demographics in Old North. You got the African American majority, you got kind of the urbanists, pioneering types, and then you got the Old North Side Hoosiers. So the remnants of the Old North Side Hoosiers, which is where my family came from, the Old North Side Hoosiers. One of them, she owns some property in Old North. She said, we got, this is an old white lady. She said, we got these white people moving in. They're kind of weird. They like to do yoga on the roof and stuff like that, but I guess they're okay. She don't really understand. She knows she's broke. She packs a 45. She's living in Old North, and she can't understand why anybody with money would want to, move in the neighborhood, right? So then you got Hyde Park, which, you have a lot of different things. You neighbor to College Hill. Obviously you have a lot of street activity going on. Mm-hmm. So you have the same architecture, the same brick that you have in Old North, but you got considerable more street action, and then you're on the cusp of major corporations, Procter and Gamble, etc. Malincrot, yeah, which is one of the jobs that you wanted to get. Back in the day, Malincrot, GM, Monsanto, Ford, those are the jobs that people were trying to get. How do you bring all these things together for a development strategy that works for everybody? They kind of lifts all votes in Hyde Park.
Well, I'm going to use some personal experiences. First of all, I lived in probably 10 different municipalities in St. Louis County. I'd never really worked for anybody. My father was an entrepreneur, so that was instilled in me. But I did work for the city at one time, well, twice, under 3 different mayors. And with that came a knowledge of development and getting more in tune with how TANFs, tax abatements, TIFs, all of that worked. And I did see a great divide in how that partnered. Going through the city, or working through the city, I had to be a resident. So one of my first projects as a compliance specialist was the loft district up and down Washington. So at that time I got a loft for $450 a month, which included my utilities. It was 3,500 square feet, totally rehabbed. I told everybody that I knew this is a great opportunity, but nobody came that looked like me. So that's one stigma. Some of us have this stigma, well, if I don't see anybody that looks like me, I don't want to go there. So from there, I said, I'm going to buy a piece of property. So I saw how the South Side was starting. That was the first place that they started developing. This was 30 years ago. Pyramid Construction was the icon.
Black-owned company.
No, Pyramid was not black. No, it was owned by a white guy who had a lot of. Yeah, he went to jail. He went to jail. And I will say this, and I think I could say this in total honesty. What happened to him happens to a lot of people once they get wrapped up in the involvement of politics
Right.
and the money.
Yeah.
If he'd have just stayed focused and stayed in his lane, I think he.
And this is in city after city. That
Yes.
world often ends you in jail.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started looking at the LRA properties and how they could be developed. So I bought one. And my family almost had a breakdown. They said, "You buying property where and living where?"
Right.
But I knew from inside information and being in the communities that it's coming around. I said, and it may not even be in my lifetime, but it's coming.
In Hyde Park.
In Hyde Park.
Yeah.
Hyde Park, Old North, College Hills, Lindo Place, Fairgrounds. We have some of the best real estate in the state of Missouri, and I know it and everybody else knows. What really inspired me and also invigorated me was the fact that, I'll use my home for example. I bought 3 row houses and turned it into a single dwelling. Developers did the same thing. They took it from a single and made it into 3, and they did that 3 times. What did they do? They came in, the property was in disrepair. They got the tax abatements, they got TIFs, they got federal subsidies. 10, 15 years when that works, it's gone, they walk away, the property falls in disrepair, it sits for 10 years, and they do the same thing over and over again. So to me, I thought, acting as my own developer, I could do that and then show other individuals how they can do it and take some of that power and some of that money away from the large corporations and supporters. And so that is one of the things that I see that we're lacking is, number 1, we want instantaneous. Number 2, we don't want to do the fight, because it's a fight to fight these big corporations. And I know that, at least in my community, I share that with people. I know that you may not have the wherewithal, the vanguards that have been there 40, 50 years, where if they make a phone call or if somebody sees that they're against something like the stadium, then all of a sudden the building inspectors are coming and writing citations. So everybody's not going to have the wherewithal where they're going to stand up and say, I'm going to be on channel 2, 4, and 5, or go down to the mayor's office and say, the building inspector didn't know that I work for the city. I'm sure you want to tell him to not write citations on my building. So all of that meaning you've got to stand up and fight. If they're coming after and don't agree with what you're saying, but change has to come. We may not always like how it looks, but that's the process of change.
Now, in North St. Louis, one thing that comes to my mind is 2 things, actually. One is life experience and perceptions, and the second is what happened to us in Walnut Park. It's actually called the Mark Twain neighborhood. That's another one of the useless neighborhood names that no one really uses. Everyone in the neighborhood called it Walnut Park. We were on the 5300 block of Geraldine. This is in the early 90s. I was part of a group. We broke away from a storefront monster that started on Union Natural Bridge, actually on top of what you had, and started the Islamic Institute Learning on Geraldine and Harney, 4386 Geraldine. When we got the keys to the building, Suhaib Webb, who's now a famous celebrity event, New York Times, whole 9 yards, walked in the building and fell in the basement because the rot, right? We rehabbed it. We put 3 apartments. It's been rehabbed again, but at that time we put 3 apartments and opened a worship center. And we bought a couple houses on the block, for next to nothing. Rehabbed it. And at that time, people said, "Man, you crazy? Walnut Park, Murderville." But they knew us, and I don't mean to offend my progressive liberal friends here, but we all were strapped. So we only feared the law. So we didn't care nothing about how dangerous we were trying to
Exactly.
to make something happen in the neighborhood. And we were going strong for a few years. Then our teacher got sick and had to leave St. Louis, and things just kind of stagnated, and nothing really happened like we wanted it to. Then over the course of years, we find it very hard to tell people, hey man, why don't you come down here? And we're talking about African American people, no white people in the picture, they're just me. They're like, man, I'm not taking my kids to Walnut Park. I'm not taking my kids to Geraldine Mahoney. You know, I'm taking my kids out to North County. You know, and how do you fight that? And I don't think it's illegitimate. You'll hear the urbanists will say, "Oh, well, it's how they count the numbers." And actually, if St. Louis was counted like they count Kansas City, it would be safe as Stockholm, Sweden. You know, you can't say that to my mother, who's had several members of the family murdered here in the city of St. Louis. Most recently, my nephew on Thanksgiving. You know what I'm trying to say? Or to me, as a 10-year cab driver, one of my coworkers was just killed a few days ago in St. Louis. So you can't run that coffee shop line to me. St. Louis ain't really dangerous. You know? How do you sell Hyde Park on African Americans? We know you can get to white people because they like the brick and they want to bicycle or something like that. But how do you sell it to African Americans? Say this is a place where you can raise your children. This is a place that to invest in, and this is the place to be, and the place where the city is not going to sell you out once you become prosperous.
I would say leading by example, and that's why I purchased where I purchased when I did, because it was in comparison to Lafayette Park. Lafayette Park looked worse than Hyde Park did now, and so that's what I used as the catalyst myself. I said, I'm going here, you know where I've lived, you know what experiences I've had, and they've been no different in St. Louis County than they've been in the city. The city's notoriety is pubbed a lot more frequently in certain areas than it is in North County. Everybody should know that if they don't. So crime is crime, and it's everywhere. And just quite honestly, for me, I feel safer. It's like, well, you're moving from Chesterfield, or you're moving from Fenton, or and you're going where? And it's like, aren't you afraid? And I said, no, I was much more afraid when I lived in Chesterfield. I'm a black, female, Muslim woman. So I've got 3 strikes. So to be amongst my own, why would I fear my own? And so this is just real talk. Like Glenn said, we're not having real conversations. And that is a real conversation. So instilling in people that look like you can be safe, you can be secure, you can build relationships. My dad owned a farmer's market 5 blocks from where I'm living today. Italians, whites, Jews, Polish, all worked in that community. It was a neighborhood. And with our diverse community as it is now there are more black people coming, but they had to see the white people come in first, which is sad. But that's because that was by design as well. So I just say, just come out, look around, look for people that look like you, look for people that don't look like you, because that's what builds community. And that's my selling point.
All right, now we have another guest. I'm told she's behind me. I can't see her. Would you mind coming around here so I can... Sunny. Not my I have a sister named Sunny too. This is not my sister. and all this.
We look alike though.
Yeah, we might look alike a little bit. All right, so introduce yourself, Sunny.
Sunny Hutton.
Sunny Hutton, all right. What kind of rhymes? And you're involved in development too?
Community development, most likely with more along community organizing, community facilitating, and convening, that aspect.
I don't know what the last part means, but I'm sure it's very profound.
I bring neighbors together
right.
so that they
facilitating.
Facilitating and convening so that they can be the drivers of development.
And with a particular organization?
Dutchtown South Community Corporation.
And where did you go to high school then?
Oh my goodness! No,
I'm
you
gonna ask.
didn't just-
I'm gonna ask-
You didn't just
I tell
ask me
people,
that.
I don't care if you grew up in St. Louis or not. You're getting the high school question.
Okay. I went to school at McClure, South Berkeley, in Ferguson.
I went to McClure North.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk about that later because this gets into what Chris is doing in North County. Not quite your footprint, but the plan is to merge all three. So to close McClure and possibly, so that's a conversation we can have for later. Now, Dutchtown South. Now, I don't want to offend my Dutchtown. Anybody live in Dutchtown here?
Close enough.
One person?
No.
Oh, you say no? Okay. All right. So not to offend any Dutchtown person, that one person, I have my own development theory of Dutchtown South. And my theory is this. As what they call Gravelwoods Park, these neighborhoods, Lafayette Square, what's the one with the nice houses? Fox Park. Fox Park is a very aesthetically pleasing place. You see, I can't pass Fox Park without thinking about 27 Mac, which was a gang when I came back in California that, I can't get into it, but my family had an unfortunate incident with it in the 90s. So every time I go by Fox Park, I'm thinking of that. Not, whatever organic produce I can get or family farms or whatever. That don't do nothing for me. I'm going to Quick Trip. But when I look at Dutchtown South, what I see is it's the North County of the city in the respect that people are moving there from other neighborhoods after being priced out, pushed out of other neighborhoods. And the only question for me is Dutchtown South is, in these other neighborhoods, they got big houses, beautiful houses, and Dutchtown South really ain't that big or beautiful. Just kind of simple houses. Houses for factory workers. These are Archie Bunker houses, My question is only one. If white people, if hipsters, if urbanists, whatever you want to call them, all of a sudden get this thing, the houses are so pretty, they're so cute. It's from the 1948 Model L architect Leroy. If that comes about, what is the future of the diversity we see in Dutchtown now? Because as it stands now, refugees, immigrants, it's a very diverse place in a metropolitan area that does not have a lot of diversity as far as outside the black-white binary. Can that be sustainable in the long term, or will we see it look like the Grove and Lafayette Square in 15, 20 years?
I think that's going to be dependent upon the people who currently live there and them actually, organizing and coming together and saying, this is what we want our neighborhood to look like, and this is what we want to keep it looking like. We do want to see the growth, the vitality of the neighborhood, but we want to ensure that the people who are there and want to stay there can stay. In our neighborhood plan that we developed, the Graveway Jefferson Historic Neighborhood Plan, that was pointed out that this is what we want for our neighborhood. We love the diversity of it and we want to keep that. Our neighborhood is 78% people of color and we want to be able to keep it that way. What I do understand is that there is the investors and the developers really looking at our neighborhood and saying like, ooh, this is a hot spot. Forbes, they put us as like the best place to invest. That scared the hell out of me.
We talked about that before you got here.
Yeah, that was scary. I was like, oh no, what is about to happen? And we just put a call out to the capitalists. But I do believe that that's what, diversity is what we value and what we want. And we are putting forth efforts with our tenant organizing to ensure that remains.
Because the reality of race in America is that white people showing up and just by living in a particular community are sending a green light to investors, to politicians, to everybody. Hey, this is a place we can go, we can live. And then next thing you get that tidal wave. And bam. Now, Mark told me to shut the fuck up and open up the questions. But, as a fellow Ferguson Florissant graduate, and by the way, I would suck at karaoke because I can't remember the name of any song. But one of the songs I do remember, I sung in the 4th grade at D. Smith Elementary. Save our school, D. Smith School. We don't want to close our doors. Brother, sister, parent, child, all join in to save the Smith School now. So that was the song. And it got closed down. So we didn't sing good enough. But North County was losing population at that time. Ferguson Florissant School District. Obviously, from the baby boom, it explodes, and then Ferguson Florissant was actually, which we both went to, so was a court-ordered school district, which merged white districts, Ferguson, Florissant, with Berkeley, Smith, with Robertson, Kinloch School District, which the courts had deemed had been segregated, and he created this Ferguson Florissant School District. And this is one thing that, Mark can tell you, I have a skeptical attitude towards white do-gooders and white saviors. And one of it is from the Ferguson Florissant School District. Because if you look at Ferguson Florissant, it was created by do-gooders. They said, no, these children will go to school from the kindergarten to the 12th grade. And they'll know each other, and they'll love each other, and it would be a diverse area, and black, white will live in. And what happened? I'm 43 years old. I'll tell you what happened. People my age, kindergarten to 12, if they were white, they moved out to St. Peter's, O'Fallon, Wentzville, Lake St. Louis, Troy, Warren County. And Ferguson Florissant School District now is over 80% African American, and probably in 10 years it will be, in the range of what Riverview Gardens is, which is well over 90%. What lesson from North County, can you bring to the city of St. Louis? That a lot of these things going on in the city, they have happened in the county as well. Do you carry that with you?
I think the lesson that I bring is that you have to have the most impacted groups a part of the decision-making process. We can't keep making policy and making decisions without them. And if they were to stand there and be a part of it, they would tell you what they want for their neighborhoods, and then they know how to do it. And we keep devaluing them by excluding them from the process.
Well, we're going to open up to questions now. So if anybody has any questions.
I'll just ask the rest of my question.
Mr. Kerr, Schmidt.
Yeah, you guys were talking earlier about silver bullet solutions to St. Louis. So it got me thinking that maybe selling off the airport isn't a great idea. But what do you guys think about that?
All right. Well, as Matt was at the Board of Elections with me when we dropped off the petition to stop it. It is. I mean, the airport and, soon probably the water department and also probably refuse and pretty much anything else that isn't bolted to the ground is going to be sold off because we're bankrupt and we don't have any money. And the city is facing an inflection point right now where it has to choose between either levying taxes or getting pilots from SLU, WashU, and BJC, the large stakeholders in the area.
Is that going to happen?
Well, but this is the point. This is the choice we have to make. All right. Either we're selling everything off, and we're not going to have any assets, and all we're going to do is kick the can of bankruptcy, like actual Chapter 9, down the road 10 years. Or we can set ourselves up on a sustainable path. And seeing as WashU, BJC, and SLU take up a amazing amount of the city's most expensive real estate, and are a huge percentage of our city's domestic product, however you want to call it. Unless they start kicking in more, it's going to drag the whole city down with them, right? But instead of doing that, politicians are doing what is easier and better for their campaign accounts, which is to try and sell things off. None of the ideas around the airport have any, popular support outside of the halls of, City Hall and the lobbyists. So, I mean, There's no people should realize that what we're seeing now is no different than what you see in Greece or in Detroit or in any place where a government, at whatever level it happens to be at, goes bankrupt.
When you think of the airport, two things come to my mind. Number one, someone else can add in. Number one is the Amazon bid. So I'm spending half my time in Dallas for family reasons and here in St. Louis. And I looked at the difference in the Amazon bid mentality. Dallas actually thinks they're going to get Amazon. Okay, and the average people are like, man, we don't want Amazon. Traffic's bad enough already. Cost of living is already going up. Like 10 years ago, you could rent an apartment in Dallas for the same price as St. Louis. Now it's like not quite twice as much, but almost twice as much. So it's way more expensive. And they're like, we don't want it because things are just going to get worse. St. Louis, which is not adding 140,000 residents a year like the Dallas-Fort Worth Metro, is losing residents and stagnant regionally, put together this bid, which I think was, I mean, I know that they would have called them out if they didn't do it. They would say, hey, you're not even trying. So they had to protect themselves against that. But anybody to have any kind of illusion that Amazon was coming to St. Louis, I mean, I think it's, you got to get out a little more. You got to travel a little bit. But I was thinking they were going to just give the airport to Amazon. Just say, hey, part of our bid, Lambert International
We've got this whole second runway that we're not using over here, guys. Right?
Because I remember in the 80s when they started tearing down the houses.
Right.
In Kinloch, in Berkeley, in Rogers. I remember these neighborhoods when they were intact.
Yeah.
When I give tours in Kinloch, I'm remembering who lived on these streets. Now it just like it had always been like a farmland or something, right? 30 years, 35 years they've had some of this land. Springdale neighborhood of Berkeley, okay, which the city of Berkeley begged.
I lived there.
Yeah.
They bought me out.
Yeah, some of my earliest memories are at Bill's on Bridgedale and Springdale.
Absolutely.
At that corner store.
Yes.
I remember.
Yes.
I vividly remember as a middle schooler, Bill putting this 45 in my face. But I had a lot of fun memories there too. But 30 years, and they have an empty parking lot to show for 30 years. Okay. So when I think of the St. Louis airport, everything attached to it seems to not go very well, as far as development is concerned. And Megan, you have something you want to answer?
But I will say, I think the other thing to look about it is actually our airport's doing pretty well right now. And so yes, we've made a lot of mistakes. It still has a lot of debt, but it's growing. Our revenues are increasing. We just added another new airline just last week, and there's a Sun. They're actively working on courting some other international carriers now that we've seen the flights to Iceland have sold out pretty much as soon as they opened up. There's a demand there that we know exists. There's a new owner that's going to be coming on for the China hub. There's a number of new hangars that are being built and leased out to corporate jets. There's a lot of projects that are going to be coming online with that airport in the next 3 to 5 years, and that means that the revenues that are being produced from that airport are going to go up, and that means more revenue for the city as a result of that. And that is why we have to keep this public. It is a profitable asset for the city. And what we see over and over and over again is when you privatize what should be public services, it's always the public that loses. And it's always the people that donate to the campaigns and already have a ton of money who end up being the winners. And we see that this deal, and I use that in quotes, has been set up that way from the very beginning. With a ton of conflicts of interest, ton of money already flying around into different campaign accounts and things like that to make sure that this goes through.
Well, I'll just throw this out right now. I get grumpy below 60 degrees, but if any Patreon donor wants to hook your boy up with tickets to Iceland,
he might be able to afford it. Our host here gave us a very generous gift today.
Yeah, nice. I won't I won't be mad. Second question.
Can I just add one last tiny point to that, which is not that I know really much about the airport, but best book I've ever read on just city issues generally is Richard Schrager's City Power, and they talk a lot about like silver bullet versus actual investment in services debate. So I just want to put that out there that they talk a lot about.
We'll put that on the reading
issue.
list. Yeah. Next question for the audience.
I got one.
All right.
All right. I would like to ask Chris, as somebody who's been involved in community development for a long time, as somebody...
means I'm old.
I didn't want to put it that way.
I knew Archie Bunker. I don't think he knows in the room. A couple people
So-
know who Archie Bunker
I know
is.
Chris had the benefit of having a mentor in Jim Sporlater, who himself was involved in St. Louis development, going back to Freedom of Residence with Dee Epstein, and then later on with Jeff Vanderloo. So my question to Chris would be, with all these younger folks here, what his advice would be for them to stick it in the long haul and how to succeed and not, you've stuck to your guns, you haven't gotten in trouble. How do you do it?
Having that car, right?
Yes, I have not gotten in trouble. That's correct, and I don't plan on getting in trouble. No, I think for folks who are on the front side of their career, think about this is, push everybody, right? I mean, challenge even folks like me. I've been doing a long time. Okay, good. But so what, right? Again, when we look around, if we're honest, again, back to Glenn's notion about being honest, what success have we had? I mean, big picture, right? We've done some great stuff. I built a bunch of buildings, we had grocery stores and movie theaters and coffee shops, a lot of housing. But at the end of the day, from a systems level standpoint, from a cumulative outcome standpoint, have we made a significant difference? And the answer is no. Right, and I can live with that. It makes me upset about it, but that's the functional reality. So you heard about I learned about this word walking the neighborhoods in JBL with Mackler Shepherd and Jim Sporlater in the early 1980s, and he kind of taught me about the relationship and the community side of it, which is great. But if we can't again deliver a system that says it's not about buildings alone, it's not about people alone, it's about both. And how do we again convince the powers that be that have the resources that we all need to make a difference, to invest in our neighborhoods and in the families that live here? Again, your kids, my kids, grandkids, all going to have the same conversation, right? Because again, some things have changed, yes, but a whole lot, no, right? It hasn't been systems change because we haven't made a good enough argument and we haven't raised enough hell to say, look, no, you need to invest in our communities if this region is going to get healthy and strong. So if you're just on the front side of your career, keep fighting, push us old folks, think about things differently, challenge our notion of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and tell the story about the power of home. Because ultimately that's what this is about, right? It's not about anything else but this notion of home. And when you think about a place, your first home, most folks have a warm feeling about that, right? And home, yes, is the building, but it's the neighborhood, it's the block, it's it's the things in and around where you live that everybody remembers. And too many children, too many families here don't have a good enough sense about what home can and should be. And again, how do we make that happen for everybody?
All right, we'll take 2 more questions from the audience. So,
Just for permission to raise hand.
Pause for 1 minute. Aaron, you can go ahead and do that.
all right, while we're pausing for Mark,
Sing a song or something like that.
I wanted to talk about something very serious right now.
The Patreon.
No, Robert Warner, who is a good guy, Grove guy, coffee guy. Stump coffee or Grump coffee, is it? Stump coffee, yeah. He had an accident. He was hit by SUV. He was injured, a cyclist. And so just want to give a shout out to Mr. Varner and his friend, Maureen Hanlon. And hopefully he makes a speedy recovery. That was a very serious accident. So if anybody knows Mr. Varner or Ms. Hanlon, be sure to reach out to them. And before I take these 2 last questions, I want to say a couple of things. Totally unrelated to development, but they are in a way. Yesterday there was a protest out in Troy, Missouri, or Missouri, as I say, at the ICE detention facility. I don't think anybody's actually in there that is from Central America at this time, but when we talk about development of cities, I'm going to quote Rudy Giuliani, who is a very popular figure in America at this time. Rudy Giuliani said, this was when he was mayor in the 90s, I was living in New York, he said, when New York City is healthy, it has a lot of immigrants. He said, when New York City is unhealthy, we don't have a lot of immigrants. And, you know, growing up in St. Louis, I just looked at the world as black and white. I remember getting off the Port Authority bus station as a teenager. One of the first things I saw was a group of Puerto Rican young women. And I turned to my friend, I said, yo, man, what the fuck is that? And he said, yo, those are just women. They live here in New York, just like teenagers. Because I hadn't really seen the diversity of humanity. St. Louis is black and white. Anybody say that they sophisticated, they this and that, St. Louis is country. If you grew up here, you country too. And I'm country. So I don't care how much kale smoothies you can drink. I don't care about your bicycle. I don't care. You from St. Louis, you country. Period. You know what I'm saying? So when I moved to New York, I saw the diversity of humanity, right? People from all over the world, which I had only seen in St. Louis in the context of the masjid in the Muslim community. Immigrants were a big part of the development of a lot of these neighborhoods. Okay. And when me and Mark toured Clark Elementary on Union, I had a thought in my head that this was a predominantly Jewish neighborhood in the 1930s and in the 1940s. That Jewish children in St. Louis were going to Clark Elementary and receiving good education. And more than likely went on to go to college and move to University City and Olivet and Creve Coeur. At the same time, Jewish children in Europe were being murdered or sent to death camps, or most of the children didn't make it to the camps, were killed before that could even happen. So a big part of the development piece is St. Louis basically, whole nother topic, not being a welcoming place for immigrants, not being a welcoming place for diversity, going back generations and going back decades, not getting that vibrancy into St. Louis, not getting that life into St. Louis, which can help renew and transform and bring you to the next chapter. So I was very happy to see people from St. Louis drive out to, and by the busload, go to the ice place in Troy, which a lot of people from North County, a lot of white people have moved out to as a product of white flight. And we're going to do something in the future in immigration. We just did a Dreamer episode last week, but that's a big part of this puzzle. Because not too many people statistically want to live in the city of St. Louis, black or white, right now. But if we can make our city a home to refugees and immigrants, you know, and my motto would be, St. Louis, it ain't all that, but it beats Damascus. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my motto. I'm not going to oversell the city. You know what I'm trying to say? You know what I'm saying? You know, we ain't all that. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's you know, very limited. You know, it's not like people get on Tinder, Bumble, and lie about themselves. No, I got to keep it real. You know, at least I ain't crazy. At least, you know, whatever. So the second point is just keep my man Varner in your thoughts. He's a nice guy. I wrote him a parking ticket one time, but he's a nice guy. Just keep Varner in your thoughts and prayers. Now we open it up to a couple more questions.
Okay, I'm behind you.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Pate. I went to high school in San Diego, Crawford High School.
All right.
I've only been here for 3 years now. I live in the county, which I didn't even know about. My wife bought the house before I moved down here with the kids. She was out here for a few months. So I hadn't toured anywhere or seen anything, and I got stuck out there with no sidewalks.
What part of the county?
I live in Crestwood.
Crestwood?
I live in Crestwood. But I'd like to be able to walk to a coffee shop.
You can walk to the former Spouter Mall.
I mean, since moving here really quickly, I got involved in a lot of stuff. I wanted to ask if you know Terry with Sun Ministries.
Yes.
Right? I mean, what happened to Sun Cafe? I haven't been in touch with those guys for quite a while. It's just one question, because I've done multiple things up there with them in Hyde Park, a couple cleanups, and just trying to attend the cafe and go to and everything. And with ND Consulting, being up there and having so many rentals and development and things like that, do you see that as being a positive? Could that be a model to assist a neighborhood, or is it like anything? There's a good and bad that comes with it. I think I know. And then just real quick for anybody on that, everybody there, I was going to say three things, but what's just one thing? Like Chris said, if you're starting off early, push people that have been doing it for a while, ask questions, things like that. What's one concrete example of what we could do to stop the brakes on the train that's been going this way for 150 years? And hopefully it doesn't take that long to turn back around.
All right, so we'll let Fatima answer the first
This is like
question.
5 questions.
We're not going to let everybody get, but we'll let Fatima, and then we'll have one other person get to that one.
Well, I know I introduced myself as founder and vice chair of Hyde Park Neighborhood Association, so I'm going to remove that hat right now while I answer those questions and just be a resident of Hyde Park. Sun Cafe closed a little over a year ago. I'm not privy to the explanation as to why they closed, so I won't speak on that. I won't even make an assumption. I will say that for me, I saw it as a plus in the beginning, and then I saw where it was actually a detriment to the community because it brought so much division within the community. And that is because of some political ties and other ties that they had with business owners in the St. Louis metropolitan
Can we back
area.
up and tell people what Sun Cafe and Ministry, because a lot of people don't know what the whole Sun thing was.
Sun Cafe or Ministries, they came in under the auspices of a religious organization, and their mission was to educate and employ the unemployable, people from prisons, homeless people. And with that came a lot of property that they were able to acquire. Again, I'm not wearing Hyde Park Neighborhood Association hat, I'm a resident. My philosophy on that was that they led people to believe that there was going to be help from the residents, for the residents in the area, and work beyond that. And that didn't turn out to be the case. As far as NDNS, I really have a personal thought on that whole process, in that there's 75, almost 80% of the real estate in Hyde Park is rental property. And so people got excited and allured by the fact, oh, there's a developer coming in, so they just have at it and did whatever they liked. There was no input from the community. There was no value given to the residents that were there. It just started to develop. And so now it's at a point, some of that development should be available for sale to those people that have rented there. But there's been nothing that's been set up for them to be able to take that in a positive financial structure, meaning you rent for 15 years and then you're able to buy. But there's no money set aside from that. There's no repairs that have been done to the property. There's no financial education classes that are really important to home ownership. So are you really supporting that person by putting them in a situation that probably is not going to work for them because of all of the things that didn't happen before? So they're not prepared. And now there's more development coming from that same development company. Nothing personal, just business and real talk. We should have been included. That is why we are working so hard with getting community benefit agreements. That is why we're working so hard to make sure that there's a neighborhood association that's set aside from the political connections in the neighborhood so that the residents truly have a voice. So I'm not pleased with what they've done, either of them. Again, you come in wearing one hat and you're switching it to another and then get upset because people see that there's been a bait and switch. And you come into our neighborhood saying, this is what you need and this is how we're going to fix it. That's another no-no for me. So again, I'm wearing Fatima Muhammad's hat, not HBNA.
Last question from the audience.
Can I say one more thing on that? So, I mean, Fatima's absolutely right. So there are a large number of units that are currently, they're funded by low-income housing tax credits. They're 15 years rental and they're coming off their rental. And, well, now they will be coming for sale. And the people that have been living in them have right of first refusal, essentially. But there's been nothing done to prepare folks to buy these homes. And, I mean, we need to talk about that. Black home ownership rate in St. Louis City is abysmally low, right? I mean, so last year there was more mortgages issued in the census tract on the eastern side of Shaw and part of Botanical Heights than there was in every census tract north of Delmar combined. The whole thing, right? You have neighborhoods that are like 20% homeowners. So when gentrification happens, it depends on this. It depends on people not having title to the property, and so it's really cheap, and the credit market is broken, right? So there's all these folks that have been living in these units that could be homeowners, because I mean, we should be real. You can buy a house with a Section 8 voucher, okay? So people there on Section 8 have the opportunity to become homeowners, and nobody's helping them make that transition because nobody cares if they actually become homeowners, all right? And that's one of these things where we've got to change our mentality around these things, right? So, I mean, this is why people get frustrated with developers, even nonprofit ones that come in, right? Because they're not stupid, you know? People have been paying rent at these places forever. They're now coming up for sale. Nobody's helping them buy them, even though there's tons of down payment and closing cost assistance available to if you can buy homes in a northern census tract. And part of my job is we go after the banks that don't do the lending, and I can tell you right now there are numerous banks with different programs. You could stack $10,000 to $15,000 of assistance. So these people on Section 8 wouldn't even need down payment money. Right? I mean, but we're just not doing anything to help.
We're going to have the last question right here. Before I see one of the biggest boosters of the city of St. Louis, Liz Gerard. So glad you showed up. This is the enthusiasm of a lot of young people. She's very enthusiastic, but I'm pessimistic. She's enthusiastic. So hopefully everyone is on the spectrum. Last question.
Sandra Henderson, a graduate of Northwest High School, second class.
What year?
67.
Okay, Coach Charlie Sherritt's state championship wrestling team, Tuck Brothers, Mel Robeson, Oswald Thomas. That was a great year to be at Northwest High School.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been around the world and back, and if I decided to move back to St. Louis, where would you suggest I go for a neighborhood that is diverse, that is welcoming, and that would be a comfort zone for a single person?
Well,
The hard word is welcoming.
if you're asking me,
Well, I'd say Hyde Park.
yeah.
I'd say Hyde Park, and this is my sister, by the way.
Oh yeah.
You put that
All right.
and all set aside, and I'm sorry if I hog the mic, but Hyde Park is one of the best places I have ever lived. I fought to leave the city. When I went to Egypt the first time, my family was like, "Are you promised you're going to come back?" If my children would have been a little older, I wouldn't be sitting here today. But when I came back, that's where I went to Hyde Park. It just spoke to me. And all the misconceptions that I'd heard about the area and other parts of the city. I go from Hyde Park to Old North to College Hills to Fairgrounds, and I still am always feeling connected. I feel invited. I feel supported. And I know that we are lacking on a lot of services that we would like to see in the area, but the enthusiasm is there. It's just getting the resources and galvanizing the people to get them organized so that we can do it. So Hyde Park, if you move any place else, you're going to be blackballed.
Well, I'll add this in. It's like when people say, oh man, you done lived in a lot of different cities. What's your favorite city? What's the best? And I'll say there is no best. There is no favorite. It's whatever is right for you at that time.
Absolutely.
I can tell you for a fact that living in New York in my 20s was way better than living in St. Louis in my 20s. Because there ain't shit to do in St. Louis for real. But now I'm in my 40s, I ain't trying to go out and, I ain't trying to, all that kind of stuff. Different stages of your life, different things. Different people, different things. One single person may say, hey man, I love St. Louis Hills. Another single person may say, man, I like JVL. It just all depends on what you're looking for and who you're looking for. And you might be able to find that anywhere. But the thing about St. Louis is this. I always come back. I lived in Jerusalem for a while. And I think St. Louis pride is similar to Israeli pride. If you talk to Israeli, they tell you they love Israel, the Israeli flag. But they say, how's the country? Oh man, this place sucks. There's nothing working here. Trying to say this. They have a very pessimistic attitude about the country. But combined with pride. Now I'm the same way. St. Louis, it sucks. I can give you a million reasons. When my daughter's in the suburbs of Dallas, she can hear fireworks. She hearing fireworks. Last night in St. Louis, I had to tell her stay away from the window, stay away from the door, because she heard popping. She wanted to go out, but it was guns. And I know the difference. I'm not, this Facebook fireworks or guns. I mean, maybe like 5% of the time, if I'm not really listening well. But if you're listening, you can tell the difference. So a lot of things about St. Louis suck, and a lot of things are wonderful. But one thing St. Louis is a home. So when I'm in St. Louis, I don't have to use my GPS. I don't have to use Waze. I can just feel at home. And for a lot of people, St. Louis is home, and you're going to try to make home better. You're under no illusions, that home is something it is and it isn't, but you are home. Your family's here. Your family history is here. Your traditions are here, your memories are here. When I could drive from neighborhood to neighborhood and have memories, personal memories or family memories, that I'm attached to. And Mark has reminded me, don't forget Provell. No. And I am the proselytizer of Provell. I am the prince of Provell, and I promote Provell everywhere. And every politician running for office that I interview in a political interview, I'm gonna put a block of Provell in front of you. And if you don't nibble, you can't get my endorsement. There is the Provell test. I'm gonna tell you something. The foodies don't like St. Louis style pizza. The sauce is too sweet. Provell ain't real cheese. Motherfucker, I know it ain't real cheese. You think you're gonna drop some knowledge on me? Oh, it's not real cheese. I can't do that. They emphasize the last word in the sentence there. I can't do it. But I know it ain't real cheese, motherfucker. I don't like real cheese. I don't like this stank ass French cheese. The only kind of cheese I eat is fake cheese, okay? And nothing is too sweet for me. So you look at Provell. St. Louis style pizza is a pizza developed for people with proletarian. It's developed for people with proletarian working class taste. You know what I'm trying to say? And all these kind of rich hipsters, they grew up at the country club and now they like the city and all this stuff. Like, oh, it's just base taste. Man, fuck you. I love St. Louis style pizza. I love Provell. Vest soda. If you're gonna feed me spaghetti, make sure it's some great vest soda to go with it. And that's all I'm saying. I love St. Louis. I love the Cardinals. Fire Matheny. And I'm happy everybody is here. And by the way, we got one coming up. Not the next one. Tomorrow we have a discussion on black politics with some real elders in the community. Check out stlspeaks.com. All our podcast interviews. We've had a lot of interesting guests. But one in the future we're going to do probably in 2 or 3 months is secession. They're going to have 3 Californias. We can leave the state of Missouri. Peace.
All right, so I want to let everybody